All right, and welcome back to the Paisan Sports podcast presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. Dante DePlacido joined yet again, believe it or not. I mean, who would have thought? By Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I've got to ask, what's the deal with this fan base? We're 11-2. We're on a 9-game win streak. Saquon is the best running back in football. The defense is the best in football. And all anybody can talk about is that we're not throwing the ball enough. What is going on?
Well, let's first start off with the A.J. Brown controversy of his comments after the game. Do you think it was blown out of proportion? And if
Yes.
so, who do you think it was blown out of proportion by?
Jalen Hurts is literally, I might have this flip flopped, but Jalen Hurts is literally A.J. Brown's daughter's godfather. Okay. I mean, we're definitely blowing this out of
But the
proportion.
reason why that relationship comes into question is because of the comments that Brandon Graham also made too. And I was listening to that live and I was kind of caught off guard when he first said that because I didn't know his intent or his meaning behind that. I don't know how closely Brandon Graham, he's obviously one of the leaders in the locker room, and AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts both also are captains on the team. So they obviously are a part of the leadership of the team, but I don't know how closely connected the defensive players and the offensive players are and how much Brandon Graham knows into the relationship of Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown and the current state of it. But um, it's always seems weird because AJ Brown or Jalen Hurts relationships with Nick Sirianni have been in question, and we haven't heard too much. Besides, it's a lot of people inferring what they think that Jalen Hurts thinks about these people, and not what he actually says or he even shows the emotion. Because sometimes, obviously, there's a lack of emotion from him. So there's a lot of people talking on the situation. Jordan Mailata also talked on it to a certain extent as well. So a lot of people have been chiming in on it. But it seemed like today when AJ Brown met with the media that he had a good tone to his voice and he was just criticizing the passing attack. And I think there is some truth and legitimacy to that call out. I don't know when he says the passing attack, when the reporter asked that question, if he necessarily means Jalen Hurts and the progressions that he's going through and not being able to see AJ Brown when he's open, or Devontae Smith and the passing attack as a whole, or it's AJ Brown wanting more solo opportunities, or it's just the passing game as a whole in itself and some of the plays. And also, one of the follow-up questions that AJ Brown was asked after he said that it was a passing attack of what they could work on with the offense was, how hard is it to get in a rhythm when you're only passing the ball a certain amount of times? And he said it's very difficult. So that wouldn't be a shot at Jalen Hurts. If anything, that would be more so of a shot at Kellen Moore. So I don't think AJ Brown is jealous of Saquon necessarily or anything like that, because I don't think anybody's really mentioned it. Although he did ask for a trade out of Tennessee before his rookie deal was up and he was dealt. And then obviously the Eagles cashed in on the 2022 draft and went to the Super Bowl with him. But he did play with Derrick Henry, who's also a high volume running back that gets a lot of carries and is the focal point of an offense. So he's dealt with this type of offense before. So, but the criticism of the offense when you're only throwing for 100 yards, I do think people aren't getting the passing game enough credit because they did only throw for 100 yards and it was versus the Panthers. But then again, you got to think Jalen Hurts threw two passing touchdowns. When you're able to throw the ball into the end zone and convert and score, then you're obviously doing something correct. So, and that's what they did in the Ravens game where they didn't pass for a lot of yards too and won in that game. So, I think a lot of that has to do with just the yardage. They're the 31st ranked passing offense right now, and they start the games off slow and they can't score. I think they're actually since 2000, they're like this out of playoff teams since 2000. They're the last ranked first half or like first quarter scoring team of any of them. So that's a crazy stat in itself, but they're winning games and it's crazy. Everybody has an expectation of versus a team like the Panthers, who obviously been playing well recently, but they should have beat them by more. And obviously the betting line was really high. It closed at 14, but you can't expect to win every single game. And when you compare it to other teams like the Lions and the Chiefs, look at what the Lions have been doing. They've been winning by the skin of their teeth. The Chiefs have
The Chiefs have
tied the
been
record.
the Chiefs have been winning by the skin of their teeth
Yeah,
the
the
entire
Chiefs just tied
season,
the record
and
for
not
the most.
only. Sorry, finish that stat.
The Chiefs just tied the record for the most wins in a season of 7 or fewer points.
Yeah, not only are the Chiefs winning by the skin of their teeth every week, but they're doing it via devil magic or being helped by the refs. And it happened yet again this week. The field goal was kicked off the upright, but bounced in for the game winning field goal. Pure luck there. And the Eagles, I mean, they won this game thanks to a phenomenal play made by Darius Slay. And if you look at this Carolina Panthers team, yeah, their record is really bad, but they've been playing much better football as of late, leading into this
And
game.
that's a big shout out to Bryce Young, who a lot of people counted
Yeah,
out. And Bryce Young, since he's been benched, has been playing really well.
yeah,
And the one
he's
thing
been
about
playing
Bryce Young,
great.
before he got into the NFL, one of the reasons why he was so good was because he was able to evade the rush. And
Which he
a lot of
did.
people
He did
thought
against us.
exactly. A lot of people thought that his size would have an issue in the NFL doing that, and up into this season, that was an issue, and part of the season was still an issue. But since then, he's been really good, and you saw some of the plays that he made that showed flashes of why he was drafted extremely high in the draft last season.
Yeah. So you look at, they won the game. That's what goddamn matters. Okay. You look at the line, what the line opened at, which was 12 and a half, right? The last time the Eagles were 12 and a half point favorites before that was when they played the Cardinals last season. How did that game go? They lost, right? This is a game this was another trap game, just like the Arizona game, but this time they won. They kept their 9-game win streak intact. They remain just a game behind the Detroit Lions for the number 1 seed. If you're a fan, you should be happy that they've escaped a trap game against a much improved football team with a win and still have those hopes for the number 1 seed, especially with the Lions set to play the Buffalo Bills next, a very losable game for the Detroit Lions. That's a game they can very well end up losing, right? And you talk about the pass game, how they're not throwing it enough. They're not, they're not throwing for enough yards. They're not doing that because they don't need to. They're running the ball with dominance. I mean, how long, or not how long, but how many times has this fan base said, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball? I mean, they picketed outside the NovaCare complex with signs that said, run the ball. Now that's this team's identity. They're running the ball, and everybody wants to complain about it. Not because they have any problem with it, but because they're constantly looking for things to complain about. These people, this side of the fan base, they can never be happy no matter what, because that's the kind of people they are. They're just the kind of people that like to complain a lot. And this is what they're picking to complain about. Okay. This team is looking very good right now. This was an off game for the defense. Cooper DeJean, who's been dominant ever since getting the starting job, he got shredded in this game. Not to say that this is going to trickle effect for the rest of the season, but you're a rookie. You're going to have a bad game here and there. But I'm just using that as an example of how poorly the defense played. And yet they only gave up 16 points. That's a bad game for this defense. And they still only allowed 16 points. That should show you something. This is a
And
Super
they
Bowl
also made crucial
caliber
stops in
team.
certain situations too.
Yeah, as they've been doing all season. This is a
But I
Super
agree.
Bowl
I agree
caliber
that
team, and we're just looking for something to complain about. And not only that, but here's the thing. Yeah, they struggled in this game, right? And like you mentioned, look at the Chiefs, look at the Lions, teams that struggle. Well, the Lions were blowing teams out for a while, but they've been struggling lately. The Chiefs have been struggling all season. The last time we played a game in which we struggled in was against the Jaguars. That was quite a while ago, and we still won that game as well. And with AJ Brown on the field, this team is 10-0. So at full health, this team is unbeaten. This is a damn good football team. They've beaten some damn good teams as well. They beat the Ravens. They beat the Rams. They beat the Packers. They beat the Saints while they were playing well. They beat the Commanders. I might have already said the Commanders. I don't know. But the point is, this is a great football team. They're in a great position right now. And all everybody wants to do is complain. I haven't even been able to listen to the radio all week because I can't listen to this crap.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that people just like to complain. All Jalen Hurts has done since he's become the starting quarterback, and Nick Sirianni, who's been coming under fire this season, especially until they went on the winning streak, and when obviously him shaving his head bald and all that
He needs
controversy.
to shave it again.
But
He needs to shave it again.
But people are just overly critical for no reason. All Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts have done is win since they've
Yeah.
he's taken over at head coach, and Jalen Hurts has taken over as a starting quarterback for a full season. So a lot of people are just overly critical. They don't accept Jalen for who he is as a quarterback. He was paid a lot of money, and people tie all the money that is paid to him about he needs to perform a certain way. I know when you look at the total touchdown stats, I'm not going to compare him and Josh Allen, what Josh Allen does for his team, because I think Josh Allen does more for the Bills than what Jalen Hurts does for the Eagles. But when you do look at the total touchdowns, you can come away from that and not say, oh, Jalen Hurts is as dynamic as Josh Allen as a passer, because Josh Allen's a unanimous top 5 quarterback in the league. And look at some of the other numbers of Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. But the one reason why or one of the categories that puts himself in that conversation is how much that he wins. So people just have to accept who he is, even if it's tush pushes and he gets into the end zone. I think there was a stat that Saquon Barkley's been tackled at the 1 yard line 11 times this year, and 10 of them have turned into Jalen Hurts tush push touchdowns. But at the end of the day, the Philadelphia Eagles are scoring
Hey,
touchdowns.
They actually tried to. They actually tried to run him in at the 1 yard line against Carolina. It didn't work out, and then they went to the tush push. But they did. They did attempt it finally. I did see somebody on Twitter talk about their theory as to why this team gets off to slow starts, and it's because in the first of all, in the first 2 drives, the Eagles have the worst offense in the league, and in the second 2 drives, they have the best offense in the league. But somebody pointed out that in the first 2 drives, they try and get the other guys involved. Right, they'll throw to Jahan Dotson, they'll throw to Britton McCovey, they'll throw to Johnny Wilson.
Well, that was one of the
We
reasons
saw
why
last week against Baltimore, they ran it with Will Shipley on the first drive. You know, it's like in the first 2 drives, Kellen Moore is trying to get the rest of the offense involved because all year it's just been AJ, Devontae, and Saquon, but it just doesn't work out. And then he goes to the key guys, and the offense starts moving. So I think that's I think it's a poor job. I think it's a poor job of an opening script of plays, and I think it's a poor job of choosing which personnel to target on the first 2 drives. I mean, wait till you get the offense going and you get a lead going, and then try and get other guys involved. Don't do it on the opening drive.
Well, that's been one of the issues of why I think their passing game hasn't been dynamic, is because it's, usually to the same suspects every single time they throw the ball.
Yeah.
But people were also critical of that before in the past, of Jalen only just chucking the ball up to AJ Brown. And like when some of the times where Jalen
But
Brown,
who gives a shit? If it works, it works. That's the problem with this fan base is, like no matter what they're doing at the time, they'll complain, oh, they're doing this, but they need to be doing that. And then they'll start doing that, and they say, oh, they're doing that, but now they're not doing this. And it's like, it just doesn't make any goddamn sense. Like, who cares if he's not getting other people involved? If they're winning
well, the
games,
offense can definitely be.
if they're not passing it more. If they're winning games, that's what's more important. Work with what wins games, not what the fan base wants to see. Who gives a fuck what we want to see? I want to see us win games.
But
That's what I want.
I think people are just like, with the hindsight, that they believe this isn't a formula to win a championship, and that it's going to flare out at some point, and they need to open up the passing game.
It's
not like when we started the season.
That's a theory backed up by absolutely nothing to just validate their complaining.
And it's not like when they first started the season. The first game of the season, Jalen was almost reckless with the ball, and he was really aggressive with the pockets that he was throwing into. And we thought that was going to be the theme of the season, and that died down very quickly. And he's became a lot more reserved. And I think he's a little bit gun shy. And how you said that they're getting off to slow starts, that target that Jahan Dotson got to begin the game, there was AJ Brown streaming down the middle of the field wide open. And those are some of the plays that I think people, as AJ Brown himself, are recognizing that he could be targeted a little bit more. But AJ Brown also, I think before this in the Rams game when Saquon went crazy for 255 yards rushing and 300 total scrimmage yards, AJ Brown had a 100-yard receiving game. And before that, I think up to this week, 2 out of his last 3 games were 100-yard receiving games,
Yeah.
one of them being an 89-yard receiving game.
Yeah,
So
he has one game where he doesn't rack up a ton of yards, and we act like there's an issue with Jalen, AJ Brown. Oh, Jalen doesn't get the ball to AJ Brown enough, blah, 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 blah. After, like, we're basing our whole opinion on the season off of one game. It's like suddenly we forget we beat the Ravens and all those good teams. Suddenly we forget we had all those blowout wins. Now all it's about is, oh, we barely beat the Panthers and AJ Brown didn't get involved enough and we didn't throw the ball enough, and that's the identity of this team. Like, no, it was one game. It's a
I think you can win games.
Season.
I think the way they're playing right now, if they want to run the ball heavy, which they have been doing, I think they can win games by doing that if they're able to convert in the red zone, which they're not the best team in the red zone right now. But if they're able to throw for 2 passing touchdowns, I don't really think it matters too much what the passing yardage looks like if you're able to convert passing inside the red zone like they were able to in the Ravens game and in this game. But if they're not able to convert passing wise in those scenarios, then it's going to be tough to just run
Speaking of
down
the Ravens game,
the entire season.
Speaking of the Ravens game, right? There was 2 touchdown drives to close out the second half. I mean, the first half in that game, right? On both of those drives, it was primarily the passing game, and they threw the ball very, very well. I even remember seeing the graphic of all of Jalen Hurts' completions out of those pass attempts, those 2 drives. They were throwing the ball very, very effectively. This is a team that can throw the ball very effectively. This is a quarterback that can throw the ball very effectively. They're not going to do it every single game because it's an NFL season. Not every game is gonna look exactly the same. Not each individual game is gonna dictate the identity of this team. You're also looking at Jalen Hurts, a quarterback who had a phenomenal Super Bowl going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. And when the game was on the line, it was time for Jalen Hurts to put the Eagles in the end zone. He did exactly that. The defense ended up losing the game, but Jalen Hurts, when he had the ball in his hands with the Super Bowl on the line, he marched that team downfield and he got them into the end zone.
He connected with AJ Brown in the Super Bowl. He connected with AJ Brown on a 50+ yard touchdown in double coverage.
Yeah.
So we've seen it before in those scenarios.
We've seen it plenty of times before. I mean, how many receiving yards does AJ Brown have already as an Eagle early into his tenure as a Philadelphia Eagle? This is only his 3rd season, and his receiving yards as an Eagle are through the roof. I mean, it's like we get so locked in onto just one game, and I really think it's just because people want a reason to complain. It's utterly ridiculous.
I think it is
and
too.
one thing I will say, sorry, go ahead.
No, keep going.
One thing I will say, I'm actually happy the Eagles struggled to beat the Panthers, right? You look at a 9-game win streak. A lot of those games were dominant wins. Let's say they dominate a bad Carolina Panthers team, right? 9-game win streak, you might start to feel a little ahead of yourself, you know? This is a game that sets them back down to earth without taking an L in the win column, right? You still get to get out of there with the win, but it also sets you back down to earth, which you need at a certain point in the season. So they were able to face that while not taking a loss, and I think that's huge.
Well, it wasn't just the offense has been the entire conversation of what people have been talking about since the comments that have came out of the locker room and people reacting to those. But the defense struggled as well versus the Panthers, which was kind of alarming, which people thought the Eagles defense was going to completely shut down and neutralize them.
It's a long season.
Yeah,
I
I don't know why
remember.
people, and especially like we talked about before, the comparison to some of the other best teams in the league and how they've struggled. I don't think anybody thought the Bills were going to lose to the Rams this week too, and their defense got torched as well. So every good team in the NFL, that's just the theme. There's been teams that have been going on streaks of blowing out teams, and then as a whole, all the teams that have the most wins in the league have gotten a lot of those victories in very close, tight knit quarter games. So. No one's been that impressive in the NFL this season. I think every single team is beatable, and I just really like the Eagles' chances. So moving forward to the Steelers
Well,
game this
actually,
week.
one thing I want to say finally, one final thought I want to say. I look back to 2017, right? I look at when Nick Foles took over the starting job. Okay, I look back to his first game as a starter. All right, it was against the New York Giants. Right, Nick Foles threw 4 passing touchdowns in that game. The Eagles' defense got absolutely shredded in that game, but they won with Nick Foles throwing 4 passing touchdowns. And I remember a lot of the reaction from the fan base saying, well, what the hell? What? Our defense stinks all of a sudden. What's up with the defense? How are we going to solve this issue with the defense? As if it wasn't just one game, right? Then the next game they came out, I believe that was against the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken. All right. And the defense plays phenomenal against the Raiders. Nick Foles has a bad game. And everybody's like, oh, good to see. Oh, we have good defense. Good. But what's up with Nick Foles? What are we going to do? Nick Foles stinks now. Like, the point is, that's an NFL season in the works. Some weeks you have a great defense, some weeks you don't. Some weeks you have a great passing attack, some weeks you don't. Some weeks you have a great running attack, other weeks you don't. That's how a season progresses. It's like it's some of these people first time watching
But
football.
you do have
And
to
how
you
did
do
that
have to
season
admit.
end? And how did that season end? It ended with a goddamn Lombardi trophy. Okay?
Well, you
It's
have to do admit that it is pretty impressive that they have the record that they have with the 31st passing offense. You do have to admit that.
but it's because they're not throwing the ball a ton. They're running it. But they've been efficient with throwing it. Our quarterback has a passer rating over 100. He's only thrown 5 interceptions. Or 6. It's either 5 or 6. I think it's 5.
He's thrown
Yeah,
five,
it's 5.
16
It's
passing
16 or
touchdowns,
5.
5 interceptions. But let's move on to the Steelers because a lot was, chalked up to that game versus the Panthers, but that was a little niche in the road. They're not the most important team, and that wasn't the most important game. You just would like to see the Eagles get more on track in that game, but it's going to be a really nice test. It would be a little bit more alarming if the Eagles were coming off that game versus the Panthers and they were playing another team that wasn't up to the caliber of their standards, or it looks like has a chance this season to make it to the Super Bowl. And they had another struggling performance, but I don't think anybody's going to care what happens in this Steelers game as long as they get a victory out of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing entirely, right? Is you play a great team and you win by the skin of your teeth. It's great, you won the game. But when you play a bad team like the Panthers, people don't care that you got the win. They care that you didn't look great against them. Me, I'm not the same way. To me, a win is a goddamn win. And that's exactly how I'm going to feel, especially at this point of the season, by the way, when you're fighting and competing for the number 1 seed. I wouldn't rather see the offense absolutely go off and Jalen Hurts throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, but we lose. No, I want the win. I want that 1 seed. Let's keep competing for that and stacking up W's any which way we can. So that's exactly how I'm going to feel about the Steelers game also. But yeah, it is definitely going to be a very impressive win if they do win the game. They open as 4.5-point favorites, which is an Eagles line because they're at home. So if you take away the 3 points automatically given to the home team, Eagles are still favorites. I like their chances in this game. I think the pass rush had to deal with a very mobile Bryce Young all game long against the Panthers, trying to chase him around and bring him down for sacks. So going up against a middle-aged Russell Wilson, instead of that, it's going to feel a bit easier to get to him in the backfield. So
And he's going to be without his top receiving
George
option, George
Pickens. Yeah,
Pickens,
it's
as
going to be
well. Too,
without George
so.
Pickens.
Do you
Um,
think the offense? Do you think Kellen Moore and the offense and Nick Sirianni um, are going to make more of a conscious effort to get the passing game
yes.
involved versus the Steelers? Because you also got to think something that we didn't mention so far when we were having this conversation was um, the offensive line went to the coaching staff when they were struggling earlier in the season and asked them to run the ball more. So this is a decision that the offensive line, which has a lot of leaders and a lot of veteran guys that they're paying a lot of money to. Um, are asking. But also with Jalen and AJ Brown being the headline of this entire controversy, if you want to call it that, they're the two highest paid players on the Eagles. So you could see why a lot of people make a big fuss out of what's going on right now. But the offensive line loves running the ball. I think everybody on the team loves winning. Saquon. He just broke the single season record for LaShawn McCoy versus the Panthers. He's on pace to break the all-time record with Eric Dickerson. I'm not saying, with getting the passing game more involved versus the Steelers and the complaints that there have been, they might get a little deterred of, trying to chase the record for Saquon, but it could also just happen naturally if they get the offense going and it's more balanced and as dynamic as it should be.
Yeah. So in terms of, everything that happened and getting the pass game more involved, I definitely think they are. And it's not because it's what I want them to do. I kind of would rather them just tell the fans fuck off and keep running the ball, right? I think that's when Nick Sirianni is at his best, when he's just being himself despite what the fans think. Um, but I think knowing Nick Sirianni, knowing the history of this team with Sirianni, I think now he's going to get the pass game more involved in the Steelers game. And it's funny because the last time there was an issue like this and they followed it up by getting the pass game more involved was the last time they played the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that was when AJ
That was
Brown,
when AJ memed the
yeah,
defensive backs on
I think
the
what was it?
Steelers.
I think it was three
Yeah, it
touchdowns.
was 3.
And yeah, and on the third one,
Going
he
like
cleaned
straight at
that
Minka
versus the
Fitzpatrick too in
DBs.
double coverage, like just embarrassing people. So yeah, the last time, and that was another good. I mean, Mike Tomlin's Steelers have always been prepared. He's had winning seasons ever since he's gotten there. So their defense is always good and up to caliber. The thing is, that's why people are just upset because you're paying these wide receivers so much money. You paid Saquon a decent amount of money, and it doesn't really matter about the money. It just matters how you're going to win. But they just know how good these receivers are and that they can get more involved. And, when you're having slow starts, it's not like the offense is perfect right now. It's not like the offense is running the ball the entire game down people's throats. It's more so in the second half when they're having a lot of success. They have a lot of success throughout the entire game, but there is an element that's missing to this offense that could be repaired if they can have more balance with the passing attack. I think that's why people are mad. It's not like people would be saying this if the offense was completely flourishing and they're scoring a bunch of points throughout every single quarter, and not more so in the way of getting down every game a little bit and then coming back.
Look, to me, the bottom line is they're 11-2 and they're in a 9-game win streak. Okay. I don't care how they look in each win as long as they get the win. And you can't even make the argument of like, they haven't played anybody. They're barely winning against bad teams, which was the argument last year, right? But they've blown out teams. They've beaten great teams. This is a great football team. Okay.
I
So
don't know
yeah,
if I would say that's the argument last year. I mean, they beat the Bills and the Chiefs, and then everything, kind of collapsed after that. So it's like more so it was,
yeah, well, but
it
that
was
was
at the
the
end of the season
argument.
versus teams that they should beat.
That was the argument throughout the season before they played the Bills and the Chiefs. And then even when they beat the Bills and the Chiefs, a lot of fans were still complaining that they were barely winning games, even though it was the Bills and the Chiefs. But that's just how
I don't think there should be
it
any comparison to last season because this has nothing to do with it's it doesn't have any of the same things going on. Last season, when you fire a defensive coordinator and you have two inexperienced coordinators that they had that didn't really have a game plan, we have really experienced coordinators on this team this season, and Vic Fangio has been doing a phenomenal job of coaching up the youngest defense in the NFL and having the success that he's had with some of the unproven guys that are making a huge name for themselves this year. The offense, obviously hasn't been completely opened up, but Kellen Moore's, getting them on pace, and they still are top, I think, 6 or 7 in the entire league in touchdowns, and they haven't scored a special teams or a defensive touchdown this year. So, they get in the end zone when they need to. The tush push is still reliable and works. Saquon gets into the end zone. They do have success getting into the end zone, passing the ball on occasions. It's really about just the volume of passing, and that's just not going to be the theme when you're running the ball as much as they do. But they could work in some like play action and figure that out a little bit, because in the beginning of the season, when we didn't have all our wide receivers, we were trying to find ways that we could scheme up plays to get the passing game going when we were feeding the ball to Dallas Goedert when he was healthy and Devontae and AJ were hurt, and wondering why Jahan Dotson has yet to get going this season. And we only could find the one reliable play on the one long Smitty touchdown and the Dallas Goedert touchdown, a mesh concept. And there hasn't really been more reliable passing plays that they can go to, but there's been a lot of reliable running plays. So, there's still time to work on it by the end of the season, and they're in a good position. I mean, it's crazy that people were so upset, not to get on the fans and how overcritical, because we've already talked about that, but the fans were so upset. You would have thought this team got eliminated from the playoffs and then actually clinching a berth to the playoffs after the victory versus the Panthers. So.
Somebody said if you were to just wake up from a coma and go on Twitter and scroll through the Twitter feed of Eagles fans talking, you would think the team was 2-11, not 11-2.
Yeah.
Excellent point. But anyway, it is now time for my meatball of the week. And my meatball of the week, his first name is Amani. I have no idea how to pronounce his last name.
Laurier.
First of all, I do not trust your pronunciations of last names. You once referred to Marcus Semien as Marcus Seaman. So I don't trust your pronunciations. Even the pronunciation you just laid out for me, I cannot physically say that.
How do you say the France dude on the Sixers last name?
Gershon.
That's his first name.
No, I thought it was
Gershon Yabusele.
I thought it was Yabusele Gershon. Oh well.
Yeah.
I've watched like 4 Sixers games this season. But anyhow, my meatball of the week, Amani. I don't know your last name.
Laurier.
Can you just let me get through it without the?
I'm giving you the name. Why is it?
Just let me do it, because I can't physically say I can't do it. So let me just do my thing. Let me do what I do, and you get all the way off of my back about it. Okay.
All right.
So my meatball of the week is Amani, whose last name I cannot pronounce. But you are a player for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't even know what position you play. You play special teams. I know that, because late in the game, about 2 minutes left, Bengals are punting you the ball. The game's tied 20-20. You blocked the punt. Great job. Now you're going to get the ball in excellent field position, and you can probably just run out the clock and kick the game-winning field goal. Awesome. Except you screwed it up, Amani. You tried to, you can clearly tell you tried to pick up the ball and run with it instead of just grabbing it or just letting it go, for that matter. Instead, you tried to pick it up and run with it and tried to be a big hero. But instead of being a big hero, you ended up being Leon Lett. Okay, that infamous Cowboys player and all of his, I can't think of a word for it. I'm blanking on the word. But anyway, you screwed up big, Amani. And thanks to you fumbling that blocked punt, the Bengals got downfield and won the game. You gave them a mulligan after that failed drive. They got downfield and they won the game. And now you go from a team that had won, 2 games in a row, still with 7 losses on the season. It's like, hey, maybe if you win out or you come close to winning out, maybe you finish 9-8, you might actually have a shot of getting into the playoffs miraculously enough with how poorly this season has gone. But you fumbled it away. You fumbled those hopes away. And now you're also looking at a remaining schedule where you're not really facing that many great teams. So it's not like you can now tank and get a great draft pick. I still think this team is going to finish like 8-9. So
I would love to see it.
I
Signing
would
up for
absolutely love to see it. So you're going to miss the playoffs. You're not going to end up with the top 15 pick. You're not going to end up with Ashton Genty. I think that could be the only possible savior
You
of
know
this
who else they're
Cowboys
not going to
team
end
is
up with
Ashton
either?
Genty. Who's that?
Did you see the news today? I was actually going to bring it up, but I found a good segue point to mention it
What
right
news?
now. Bill Belichick signing up to be the next head coach at North Carolina University.
No shit. Wow, he's becoming a college head coach. I didn't even hear that.
At UNC. So they will
That's
not
pretty
be
cool.
getting Bill Belichick in the offseason as well. So
And
they're
they're probably not getting. They're
and
probably not
Jerry
getting
Jones also
Prime.
recently made comments about, Mike McCarthy could possibly have an extension in his future. So that could always mean something else as well. But, the Cowboys have had a rough season. You're never going to win. I mean, honestly, as much as I like to trash them, it would be a lot funnier if Dak was actually playing and this was going on and they were
Well,
struggling
they
with
were
Dak.
3-5 with Dak. It's
Yeah,
not
they
like
were
they were
struggling,
looking
but
good
their
before he got
season
hurt.
was salvageable, and the classic Cowboys that would have found a way to find themselves in the playoffs if Dak was healthy. But with the
Well,
quarterback
here's
going
the
out, that's
thing.
always a tough part. So.
Here's the thing too. The Cowboys were also hoping to get Coach Prime as their next head coach, right? Rumor was maybe Sanders, enters the draft. Coach Prime leaves Colorado. He becomes the coach of the Cowboys. But, and this was a couple weeks ago, maybe a few weeks ago, but Colorado got one of the top commits in this
Yeah,
recruitment
he's
class,
actively
Jordan
recruiting.
Seaton.
I think he's building more so of a legacy of at Colorado, and I think it was smart
Yeah.
of him to go to a school that didn't really have they were really good back in the 80s, but to more so turn around a program that has been really dry for a long time and garnering a lot of attention. So we'll see how long he lasts at Colorado post both of his sons moving on to the NFL, but it's definitely going to be interesting. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
so the coaching.
when you look at a program like this that, they were stuck in limbo for so long, and you get a top commit, a 5-star recruit who's number one at his position at linebacker, I believe, Jordan Seaton. Um, when you look at that, it's like, okay, wow, now this program has a hope. It's people want to come here now. This shows that people want to go to Colorado. They want to play for Coach Prime. So when you look at the impact you've made for this program and how it can all turn around from here on out, the decision to leave becomes a lot tougher. It's not just that this guy is going to be there. This is a symbol of what can be next to come for this program. And so I don't think he's going to leave. I don't think the Cowboys are going to finish with like a top 10 pick or anything, maybe top 15, but not top 10. They're going to miss out on a huge impact player like Ashton Genty or a top quarterback in the draft. Yeah, I mean, if they finish 8-9, that's the worst possible season you can hope for, because it's not even like they're going to have a ton of cap space next year either. They're still spending a huge amount of money on their players. They're not in a very
They
good
still have to pay
situation.
Micah Parsons.
Yeah, and you still have to pay Micah Parsons. Rico Dowdle is going to be a free agent. He's finally started
Well,
to
I think
play
they're
really
definitely. I
well.
think that's one thing they'll definitely be proactive with is addressing the running back position because they need
I
to have
am
better running
hoping
offense.
that for the rest of the season, because Rico Dowdle, he had a bad start to the year. He's been playing a lot better as of late. But I'm really hoping from now to the rest of the season, Rico Dowdle just goes off to really bring up his value, and then Dallas doesn't keep him because he's going to be a free agent this year. So I think the Cowboys look like they're in a pretty bad situation, and Micah Parsons looks like he's done. Dude, he pulled in Antonio Brown at the end of that game. He looks like he's fed up. So if they got to pay Micah Parsons, is he even going to stick around? Is the question.
Yeah, we'll have to see. He's never actively asked out, but there's been a lot of hinting signs, and obviously his
Oh,
allegiance to Pennsylvania. But
hold on. Actually, one other thing I want to mention, because I remember in Dak's contract, there's 1 year where he's taking a much bigger cap hit than the other years, and I think that's next season. Hold on, I want to look at. Let's go to Spot Track. I want to look at his contract, how the cap space works. Yes. All right. So this year, 2024, Dak's cap hit is 44 million. Let's skip ahead to 2026, 67 million, 2027, 61 million, 2028, 71 million. Do you know how big his cap hit is next year?
85,
89.
89.
It's
That's
like
ridiculous.
89.9. It's basically a $90 million cap hit next year. Um, so like, what can you even do in free agency? So if they don't end up with the top pick, you're just going to see more of this next season for Dallas. And I kind of want to look at their remaining schedule. And you might be watching this and you might think, Dante, why do you care so much about the Cowboys? Okay, you're an Eagles fan. Why are you worried about them? If you're a Cowboys fan, you might be like hop off for a dick. Like what's going on here? Well, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. You know what I'm saying? So they're 5-8 right now. The remaining games, they got the Panthers on Sunday. Actually, the Panthers are starting to play better. Then they got the Buccaneers. Actually, they're a good team. Then they got us, and then they got the Commanders. Actually, I spoke too soon. I thought they had an easy schedule remaining. That's actually kind of a tough 4 games. But I'm hoping they lose to us and no one else. And wait, no, that would put them at 8-9. Okay. Yeah. So other than the game against the Eagles, I am done rooting against the Cowboys for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm not worried about, if they're actively good, then I'm worried about them. I'm not, seriously concerned about the Washington Commanders whatsoever at all or anybody in the division. But yeah, the Cowboys,
Hey,
their
Tommy
season's
Cutlets
over.
is back, baby. Tell me you're
It
not
is
worried
what it
about
is.
Tommy Cutlets.
No.
Tommy Cutlets. Speaking of Italian American athletes, the Phillies have made a new signing.
Jordan Romano.
I'm assuming he's Italian. I mean, Romano, and
Yeah, I
look at
would
the guy.
assume
He
so
looks
too.
Italian. Yeah, it's a safe assumption. That guy's a
They added
Paisan.
to the bullpen. That's the first move that they've done in the offseason. Um, Jeff Hoffman's still out there in free agency. So is Carlos Estevez, who they traded for at the deadline. Jeff Hoffman was a all-star last season. They signed Matt Strom to an extension midway through last season, as well as Christopher Sanchez. So that's what they did with the pitching. They also signed Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola to extensions. So they've wrapped up a lot of contracts to the pitching. We obviously know the worst contract on the Phillies is a pitching contract in Taijuan Walker. And there's been some rumors about them trading Alec Boehm. But a lot of the rumors about Alec Boehm just got shut down because Rob Thompson, when he was on MLB Network, just said that they're absolutely not going to trade Alec Boehm, but they're listening to offers. A lot of the offers that I've seen for Alec Boehm have been structured around starting pitching options, which I don't like at all because if they're going to give up Alec
I'm
Boehm, I
with
think they
you on
need a
that.
position player.
Yeah, I'm entirely with you on that. I think we have a great starting rotation.
You have 4
Um,
guys you're committed to and 1 guy that you can commit to, you know what I mean? And you have another guy waiting in the looms that's supposed to come up. He's not gonna pitch a lot, next year, but he's gonna give you enough in Andrew Painter. So he's gonna probably pitch around 100 innings, and then you can fill in the blanks from there. Hopefully, if they stay healthy, then they'll have a, formidable pitching rotation that doesn't have to change up a lot like it did last year when they're
yeah,
scrambling for different ideas. But I think they really need to upgrade the position players, and that's what the issue
yeah,
is. I want to put
yeah.
the
I think the
emphasis on
starting
pitching. I think they
rotation.
need to get better in the outfield, and if you want to upgrade the infield and get rid of Alec Boehm, then bring somebody in at that position. But I'm not going out and trading Alec Boehm for a starting pitching option. I think that actually puts the Phillies in a worse position, regardless of
Absolutely.
who
I
it is.
mean, you have 4 strong starting pitchers. Okay. So it's stupid to give up one of your biggest assets for a fifth one. Okay. A guy who's not even going to be, I mean, you're not going to use 5 starters in the postseason. What you got to look at is what went wrong in the postseason. Okay. And you got to look, and you got to also look at, postseason wins. That's the goal, right? A fifth starter is a regular season asset. And this team can perform well enough in the regular season to make it to the postseason. They've done it 3 years in a row. You don't need another regular season asset. You need a postseason asset, right? And when you look at how this team performed in the postseason, actually, when you look at this team's failures in the postseason, the last 2 postseasons, the starting pitching was not an issue at all. The starting pitching throughout the 3 postseasons they've been in has been excellent. So it's not an issue that needs to be addressed. An issue from this previous postseason was the bullpen. And they have addressed that now. They've brought in Jordan Romano, a guy who went on a 5-year stretch of being a lights out reliever. He only pitched in 15 games last year, and it was a rough 15 games. But we'll see if he can get back to form. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, and the other issue was the hitting. And that's consistently been the reason this team has lost in the postseason, right? Not saying the hitting has been an issue throughout all 3 postseasons. The hitting was great in the first 3 rounds in 2022 and in the first 2 rounds of 2023. But it was an issue in the World Series. It was an issue in the NLCS last year, and it was an issue in the NLDS this past season. So those are the issues you need to address: is the bullpen and the hitting. You've addressed the bullpen. Now go out and get more hitting. Don't trade Alec Bohm for a starter that's not going to elevate your chances in the postseason.
Yeah, well, one guy that's out there right now that they could go and target is Kyle Tucker. How do you feel about them going out and possibly getting Kyle Tucker? Because he's the Astros are taking offers on him.
Bring in anyone you can get at this point.
Kyle Tucker, I think, would be a really good consolation prize too, missing out on Juan Soto. I think they're very similar type of players.
Much cheaper too.
Both lefties, outfielders. Kyle Tucker's also won a Golden Glove, and this was actually a mocked-up trade that Ruben Amaro Jr., the former GM of the Phillies, mocked up between the Astros and the Phillies.
I'm not going to listen to a Ruben Amaro mock.
Alec Bohm, Nick Castellanos, and either Mick Abel or Starling Caba for Kyle Tucker and Ryan Presley.
No. Why? No. Well, what are we doing? Addition by subtraction? No. God damn it. No, Ruben Amaro. This is why you're not the GM anymore, Ruben Amaro. There's a reason you're not the GM.
I think it is a lot to give up.
I would. Nobody likes you as a commentator, and now they're happier to see Cole Hamels and less of you. God damn it.
I like
Amaro. You know what we called him back in the day? We called him Ruining Tomorrow.
I would trade Alec Bohm for Kyle Tucker, but putting Nick Castellanos.
Not him and Castellanos. That doesn't make any goddamn sense.
I mean, a Kyle Tucker probably would be a pretty package to go out and get him. I think he had another package on there.
Because then who's going to play third base?
I think also I saw another rumor that the Astros asked the Yankees for Luis Gil, who was I think he won Rookie of the Year in the AL this year, the pitcher. So. There's going to be a high asking price for him. Garrett Crochet just got traded off the White Sox too.
And why all this talk about us going after Garrett Crochet? We don't need a Garrett Crochet. We need a hitter.
Well, where do you think that is going to come from? Because they also lost out on Willie Adames, who was rumored to the Phillies. He just went to the Giants on a gigantic contract. That could have been somebody that filled in either for Trey Turner, maybe move Trey Turner to a different position and upgrade the fielding, or that could have been a replacement for Alec Bohm. I think another trade that I saw for Kyle Tucker had Isaac Paredes involved, so that's a third baseman. So maybe the Astros are actually looking for a third baseman. Anthony Santander, who had a good season with the Orioles, is also a free
I would
agent.
like an Anthony
I think
Santander.
isn't Teoscar Hernandez still out there as well?
I don't know. But here's the thing: this team needs to add another bat, right? But
But when you say bat, what are we talking
but
about?
what? Here's what I'm getting to. They need to add another bat, but they don't need to do it for the sake of doing it. It needs to be a move that makes sense. So if there are no moves that make sense, then in that situation, I think no move is better than, a pointless move. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
like this team would
that's
be
like
in a better situation if they can upgrade their offense. But if they're gonna make a sort of move where they give up two bats for one, then you're only hurting the team, and then you could flip that around and say, well, what else do you expect them to do? Well, at that point, it's just better you do nothing. Okay. And you can look at it as, but this team needs upgrades, which it does. But like I've mentioned, this team, when everyone is playing to their potential, is a dangerous team. The reason why they got bounced out of the playoffs so early this past season is a big part of it was everybody went cold going into the postseason. The postseason is it's not as much about talent as it is about getting hot at the right time. All right. So, if there is no move that makes sense to be made, then I would rather them stay put and hope they can get hot going into the postseason. That's not what I would prefer for them to do. I would prefer they upgrade the team this offseason, but I would rather them do nothing than make a move that hurts the team, like
well,
trading two
that's
of your bats for one. I think that would
yeah.
just
Well, I
hurt
mean,
the team more than
specifically in
it
that
helped
move,
it.
but if they do nothing like they did last season, where did that get them? That did, they signed a guy that had a good resume in the offseason and Whit Merrifield, and then he was cut off the roster halfway through the season. That was the only significant position player that they
Well, the
targeted
team, but
the
that's the
entire.
thing. But that's the thing is, like I mentioned, everyone at their full potential, this team is dangerous, right? A big
This
reason,
team's only
like
getting
I
older, and we've probably seen the height of this team if they don't change this team. We
no, well, I think this year, if they don't make any moves, I think this year is going to be a worse year. But then I think they have the potential to perform a lot better the following year, because the following year, then you get rid of the JT contract, and like you mentioned, this team's getting older. He's a huge example of that. So he's off the team. Hopefully, you can upgrade that position. You look at the minor leaguers they currently have that aren't quite ready yet, but can definitely be ready by the following season, like Aiden Miller, like Justin Crawford, like Mick Abel. I think there's a lot of young potential in this farm system. So if there aren't any moves to be made, I think this will be a bit of a down year, but then I like the way this team's heading the following year.
I don't think the Phillies are ever going to treat it as a down year as long as they have the
No,
contract.
but that's what I mean. And that's what I mean.
On
That's why they're going to try and improve the roster. And I think like I've said, I think they need to improve the roster. So yeah, no, I'm not. They're not going to punt away this season, and look at it as a
I don't
transitional
think
year.
there's any scenario where you can see success if this team doesn't make any change and they just go in with the same team besides upgrading maybe some tweaks in their pitching. But you're also, bullpen pitching comes at a cost. It seems like guys kind of just flare in and flare out and have different up and down type seasons here and there. So we'll see how Jordan Romano performs this year. Carlos Estevez, they traded for at the deadline. They got rid of half their bullpen at the deadline last year and tried to change it. So that's still changing. They're getting rid of an all-star potentially in Jeff Hoffman and not bringing him back. But you don't
Yeah,
even know how good.
I think that's a big mistake if you don't bring back
But you don't
Hoffman.
even know how good he's going to be. They already committed some money to Matt Strom. So I just feel like giving bullpen contracts out and just changing your bullpen every year is kind of smart, but also risky of not having guys that have familiarity there. So but I really think they need to add a position player and
No,
figure out,
I'm agreeing with you on that
they got to
100%.
do something with the outfield.
I just don't think they should do addition by subtraction. But I'm 100% with you that they need.
Yeah, no, I'm not getting rid of Alec Boehm and Castellanos, but I'm willing to get rid of Alec Boehm with it if it means where I trade Alec Boehm, get a position player back, primary an outfielder, and then maybe go out and try and sign an Alex Bregman or do something like that. I think that's the
Yeah.
way to go, and you would do the addition by subtraction in that way. Like I would open talks back up with the Chicago White Sox while the pan's hot and strike on a frying pan with them just trading Garrett Crochet, their first or second best player, and then go after Luis Robert, who they could have had at the trade deadline last year that would have helped their team. And I would upgrade the outfield and then, figure out what I want to do with Alec Boehm, whether I actually do want to trade him or not.
I don't think they should trade for a starting pitcher. I don't. I think when you have four strong starters, I think
Yeah, I
that's
don't
what
want
you
to trade
do.
for a
And if
starting
you're
pitcher.
gonna get a fifth starter, then just sign somebody decent who's inexpensive. Don't give up a legitimate asset for a fifth starter. I think that's ridiculous. So I'm completely as much as I like Garrett Crochet, I'm a huge fan of him. I just don't. I don't like the Phillies going out to get him. But we have one more Philly team to talk about. The hottest team in Philly. Last time we talked about them, they were on a 2-game win streak, and they continue to be hot. They're the best team in Philly, and you know what? I'm going to say, in my opinion, the best team in the NBA. That's the Philadelphia 76ers, winners of 4 out of their last 5 games.
Yeah, Sunday was the first victory between the trio, so that was great to see.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
Joel was back in the starting lineup playing his fourth game out of 21 opportunities this year.
And
So
cracked
the rest of
30
the team.
for the first time this season.
So, like
Um,
we talked about in the last podcast, the Bucks started off really slow, and then they've pulled things together. So maybe the Sixers can follow that same formula. It's all going to really come down to the health of the team, and if they're going to stick to their plan, or they're going to be a little bit more aggressive of playing Paul George and Joel Embiid in certain situations than doing this injury management thing that we see once or twice a week that they've been doing. If they really want to get back on track, because I think if they are going to continue to do and stick with the same formula, with which there's probably a good chance that they are going to stick to whatever formula they agreed on before the season, which could be them sitting out in certain situations that a lot of people would be playing in, then I think it's going to be hard for them to get actually back on track and make this into a playoff opportunity this season and then see where it goes from there. So, but the East, the Cavs look like a legitimate team this year in the East. Obviously, the Celtics are looking like a team that could be really scary for a long time coming, and they're the defending champions. The West, but I don't think anybody in the NBA necessarily has separated themselves and declared themselves as the best team in the NBA this season. So I think things are still up for grabs, but I can't put the Sixers back into true playoff contender
oh yeah,
opportunity right now, or the hopes of that yet, until I actually see
no,
the
they still have a big hole to climb out of, but they're finally showing that they're capable of winning games. One of their wins was an impressive win over the Orlando Magic. I think even outside of Embiid, because they had won 3 out of their last 4 before Embiid came back, and I thought, watching that win against the Magic, I thought to myself, even without Embiid, with everyone else that's on this roster, I think I think this team has the potential to start winning some games even without Embiid on the court. I mean, just look at it. Just look at the roster on paper. You have one of the best young stars in the game in Tyrese Maxey. You have a veteran guy like Paul George. You have the best rookie in the game in Jared McCain. You have Andre Drummond. You have a standout player, Yabba Dabba Doo.
I hate that.
Uh, you got some other solidified
Yeah,
veterans
that's
like
the thing about the
Caleb
Sixers is like
Martin.
they
I
haven't
mean,
had their star players.
it's a very talented roster. And you take all those guys I just mentioned, then you add a former MVP. into the mix a Joel Embiid, a dominant two-way player when he's at his best. This is a team that I think can start to get on a bit of a run if everyone stays on the court.
Yeah, it's like I said, it really just comes down to how much is this trio going to play together and the development of the other players and the role players and what they're able to do. They've had some good additions in the offseason. I don't think they're getting um any I don't think they're getting what they expected out of Paul George yet, but yeah, Selly's been really good. Cody Martin's been pretty good in what he's been asked to do. Kelly Oubre, they brought him back. He hasn't been as dynamic as a scorer, but I think he's trying to find his way. Jared McCain was obviously a really good draft pick, and they added some other veteran guards into the mix as well that have experience. So yeah, they could definitely get on a run. They're pretty deep as well, so they'll have a bunch of different options. I think a player that nobody really talks about that's been making an impact this year too has been KJ Martin. He's been playing a lot of minutes for them.
Yeah, he's
Pretty solid
looked good.
forward
He's
option.
looked
So,
really good in a couple of these wins.
and anytime you can develop a 3 or a 4, they got him in the trade for James Harden. Anytime you can develop a player like that, it's always at that position. It's always a plus. So, yeah, I think, and in the East, it's not like the NBA is different where it really does not matter what's going on in your division at all or the standings in your division. You just have to make the entire pool of the conference. So I think that's where they have a chance. I think they could definitely make the play in. They just have to go on a couple streaks of winning games and not just go on the way the season started was horrific. But if they don't have a stretch like that, for the rest of the season, they just stay on pace of
I don't
winning.
think they will, as long as everyone can kind
If
of
they can
stay
win
on
3 to
board for the
5,
most
3
part.
out of 5 games, like with however many games they have left, they have 60 games left, so they can win 3 of 5. So do that 12 times, they would win 36 games. They would have somewhere in the mid 40s amount of
That
victories.
would be
So,
43 wins, which should be enough to
yeah,
get
at
at,
least be
at
playing.
least get you into the play. I mean, you look at right now, the 8 seed is 10-14. Okay,
The
the
Miami Heat right
11
now are talking
seed.
about trading Jimmy Butler, so that could diminish the Miami Heat if they end up doing that, and depending on what they get back. So we've seen some injuries around the league as well, and I think there's 4 teams that solidify themselves at the top of the East, but the Sixers, even with not performing well, they can crawl themselves back into the
I will
mix.
say right now, the Eastern Conference play-in is a lot easier to get into than the Western Conference play-in. The Western Conference, the 11 seed. Um, oh wait, no, I'm thinking, yeah, 10 seed. The 10 seed in the Western Conference is 12-11. Their 10 seed is above 500. Ours is 10-15.
Yeah.
So it's definitely more doable than the West. They just need to get on this on a bit of a win streak. They need to start stringing some wins together. It's definitely very doable. And even if and even if not everyone stays on the court from here on out, at least now this team is getting some time to gel together. It's a lot of mishmash, but it's like, okay, let's say Paul George goes out for a bit and it's Embiid and Maxey. Embiid and Maxey have played together, plenty of times. If Embiid gets hurt and it's just Maxey and PG, they've started playing games together. They're starting to get familiar with running an offense together. So I think this team I think they can start winning some games. I think they can make the play in. They just gotta keep winning games on the court. They finally play again on Friday. I don't know why they had almost a week off. Their last game
Because
was on Sunday.
The NBA Cup is going on right now. So
That makes sense. I haven't been paying attention to the NBA Cup, but I will say, speaking of divisions and conferences and divisions not mattering in basketball, I think the NBA Cup a huge missed out opportunity, because they have the group stages. The groups should just be the divisions, right? I think that's a big missed opportunity. If you just make the groups the divisions, then the divisions finally hold weight in the NBA. But they're doing the whole group thing.
yeah, the only thing the divisions matter for is it's like Kevin Durant and the Suns and the Lakers are in the same division. So you get like, and I think the Warriors are in that division too. So you get like Steph Curry, LeBron, and KD all matching up with each other a lot. But outside of that, uh, besides like the scheduling, it really doesn't matter at all. So I think the Sixers are gonna be hesitant with Joel for the entire season. But the good thing is when he has been out in the court, he's been really good and just been doing the same things that he's normally up to, scoring a lot of points and being a volume scorer. I don't think Paul George has completely became comfortable yet and hasn't been consistent. He's still not scoring a lot of points when he goes out there, and I think he can be more aggressive on offense. But hopefully Paul George can just make it out onto the court a little bit more, because I think the Sixers are going to implement a very cautious approach with Joel Embiid to maximize the most out of him. But they also have to realize with that cautious approach where they want to reserve him as much to be healthy for a playoff run, that you have to have him play a certain amount of games so you can put yourself in position to actually make the playoffs, since you got off to such a slow start. And a lot of the reason why you got off to a slow start was because he wasn't out on the court. So I think that's
Yeah,
where
I think in
they
hindsight,
need to, ramp it up a little bit and maybe, be a little bit more aggressive with that situation. But I think it is what it is. You got to accept the situation for what it is and just know Joel Embiid has had a huge injury history. He's extremely good. When he's out on the court, he hasn't had playoff success yet. And this might be the best opportunity with the team that he has right now.
this
So
is definitely the
find
best
them way.
roster on paper that he's had. Definitely. Um,
And
which
you're
is
not going to want to find your way just into the playoffs where by the skin of your teeth and you're having a matchup with the Boston Celtics in the first round. You want to be able to get warm a little bit and have at least a mid seeding in the playoffs so that you can win a playoff series that, like a series, maybe like the Knicks last year, get a matchup like that, but actually, capitalize on it and win, have a little bit of momentum for that second round to finally get over the hump and get to a conference championship. But
I, I
I
can't
know
even
as I'm
use I
saying it,
can't even
as I'm
use get
saying
over
it,
the hump. It's like, come on,
I
this is
know
never
as I'm
gonna get over
saying
the
it
hump.
and thinking about how this season has started, I'm laughing to myself as well, talking about a conference championship appearance this year. But you never know. So
I
we'll
would
see.
put money on it that it doesn't happen. One final thing before we get out of here, I forgot to do this while we were talking about football,
You're
but
gonna talk about your team that's gonna completely tank.
oh, listen, listen. You gotta look at the Elevation 5280 Sports Fantasy Football League, and you gotta look at the story of Dante's Inferno, my team
Just
in fantasy this year.
cornball.
This is a team, okay, that lost its first two games. Okay, not only did we lose our first two games, we looked bad our first two games, being held under 90 points the first two games. I thought to myself, did I do a horrible job drafting? Is my team already cooked? Am I no longer good at fantasy football since coming out of retirement? And then bam, week 3, this team puts up 131. Okay, thanks to
All right,
performances by
we've already
Derrick
gone down.
Henry.
We've already gone down the whole list of your
No, no,
points.
no, no. We're going down the story of it. Thanks to
No, we've already
performances by
heard the
Derrick
stories.
Henry, by
No, we've
Zach
already heard the
Charbonnet.
story.
This team got on a roll. Okay. The future was looking bright. We finally lose a game. Then I start second guessing the lineup, right? Because I got a plethora of players. I got too many skill position players. I've had a QB issue all season. I've had guys rotating in and out of the QB spot. So going into my week 13 matchup, I overthought things, okay? Because I look at how great Jackson Smith-Njigba has been playing. I look at how great Terry McLaurin's been playing. Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Chuba Hubbard, Tyreek Hill. I'm like, damn it, I got to bench one of these guys. I don't want to bench any of them. But I had to bench one of them. The one I picked to bench was Tyreek Hill. He ends up putting up 20 points. Chuba Hubbard only puts up 2. I also thought Kirk Cousins was going to have a bounce back game against the Chargers. I thought Jameis Winston going up against the Denver defense, he was going to struggle. I started Kirk Cousins. I benched Jameis Winston, right? Kirk Cousins only put up 2 points. Jameis Winston put up 32. I lost by 2 points. If I would have started Jameis Winston and Tyreek Hill, which I had been doing consistently the past number of weeks, it would have been a dominating win. But because of one loss, I second guessed myself and I took an L. And then my back was against the wall. I had to either win and get into the playoffs or lose and go home after all the work this team has done this season. A lot of guys I'm proud of. But here was the issue. Week 14. If you've been with the podcast this whole season, you remember when I drafted, a lot of my players had week 14 bye weeks. I'm talking Terry McLaurin. I'm talking Derrick Henry. I'm talking Joe Mixon. I'm talking Zach Ertz. I'm talking the Denver defense that's put up double-digit points every week for me. Right? Those are 5 key players that I had to go on without. I had to start Zach Charbonnet. I had to start Jordan Addison. And what did they do? Jordan Addison gave me 40 plus points. Zach Charbonnet gave me 35 plus points. And my team put up 182 points. And God damn it, we won. And God damn it, we're in the playoffs. That's what it's all about.
You didn't even congratulate me on my first victory in 12 weeks.
I was going to bring that up. I'm not going to lie.
Thanks to a 51-point performance from Josh Allen.
Yeah, no, he finally, on the last game of the regular season, finally got back in the win column thanks to Josh Allen. You could have done pretty much anything and you still would have won. The guy only put up 62 points.
I don't want to talk. It's not.
But you can credit it. But you can credit because you put up 121. You would have.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not looking at what the other opponent did and how.
You put up 121 and you got the dub. You put 121, you got the dub. You had a good week. What's funny is there was a lot of guys who put 121. You put 121. Capelot put up 121. Child, please put up 121. Mark's monstrous team put up 122. That was a close game, 122 to 121. Zanker Spankers put 124. A lot of people putting up close to the same numbers, but yeah, no, shout out to Zach's honorable team. You guys honorably put up a win finally. Tyler Lockett, I don't know if he didn't play or not, but he didn't do anything. Not like you really had anybody else to throw in there, but yeah, you got the dub thanks to Josh Allen. So I think that was actually that was the first week all season that both of us won. So
you're projected to win 126 over 107 versus Michael Spillane, the guy himself. So
yeah, but here's the thing with that is
he's got some guys on his bench though.
Well, the only guy I'm really seeing on his bench is Kenneth Walker. Who, if he starts him over Vidal,
he's got Cortland Sutton too. He's riding with two tight ends out there, but he can put Cortland Sutton in, which he'll probably do.
I have 2 skill position players on my bench who are projected around 15 points: Smith Najigba and Jordan Addison. And if Kenneth Walker, he's listed as questionable, if he doesn't end up playing, then I gotta consider maybe starting Zach Charbonnet after the performance he put up, getting the bulk.
I think that has to be that's going to be Kenneth Walker versus Zach Charbonnet show. So if Kenneth Walker, who's questionable right now, doesn't play, then I think that's wise. But I wouldn't do that.
Well, but I also don't know if I would want to start him over Hubbard, because Hubbard is going up against one of the worst run defenses in the league. And
what I realized?
And their second string running back is now hurt, so he's going to get more carries. So it's a tough decision. But I'm starting Jameis Winston against Kansas City over Caleb Williams against Minnesota. I dropped Kirk Cousins. I was done with him after that 2.4 interception performance.
Yeah, that's true.
Zach Ertz is my starting tight end now instead of Jake Ferguson, the guy who I originally drafted. I ended up picking up Zach Ertz after Luke Musgrave got hurt, but he's been doing a lot better than Ferguson. And some buddies of mine have been telling me you gotta get rid of Will Shipley. You need to stack up your bench for the playoffs. And to that I say, no. Okay.
What if week 18? What if week 18 the Eagles are not, Saquon, the record's dead or whatever. The situation's already handled. He already beat the record in 16 games, or they're just not going to play him. And Will Shipley's the lead back in week 18 and is getting high volume and is carrying the rock and scores 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. And maybe Derrick Henry is being rested that week, and whatever.
I mean, I wouldn't be hopeful for this to happen. I think that's worst case scenario for you. So, but
yeah, well, listen, there's a good chance Will Shipley never sees my starting lineup, and there's a good chance whoever I pick up in replace of him would never see the starting lineup anyhow. So
you know who's just out in free agency?
What?
I actually picked him up today. Was Javonte Williams, the Broncos running back.
Oh wait, it's only a 2-round playoff, so I don't even have to worry about. Oh, it's week 17 and week 18.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks, and each round is 2 weeks.
Oh, that's right. It's been a while since I've played fantasy.
So what you need to do now, what would be wise now, is if you were to move on from Will Shipley, which you should.
No, I'm going to prove a point by winning the chip with Will Shipley.
That's not smart because you can go drop him, pick up a defense that has a really favorable matchup for the end of the season.
My other worry of it too. I picked up Will Shipley in case Saquon gets hurt, right? Saquon's not gotten hurt. Will Shipley is sat on my bench. Okay. Because that's the kind of luck I have. You look at a guy like Saquon, you make a fantasy decision to pick up a guy like Will Shipley in case Saquon gets hurt. And then Saquon never gets hurt. So my luck would be I drop Will Shipley and then Saquon gets hurt. And I do not want
I don't
that
even want to hear those words.
Exactly. So Will Shipley is staying on my roster to keep Saquon healthy. You get what I'm saying?
No, that doesn't make any sense.
It makes perfect sense. But
anyway, that wraps it up for this week, episode 76 of the Paisan Sports podcast, presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. We will be back next week, and hopefully the passing game for the Eagles looks better and people stop complaining about it. Maybe, we'll throw out the meme of, the meme of, I forget what you would say the figure is, but they're poking the stick at do something. Maybe the Phillies will end up doing something. So
they have been doing something. They've won 11 goddamn games.
And from this point on, we're going to start doing the podcast most likely on Mondays. So today is Wednesday. The Sixers play on Friday. They'll probably have another game in between then since we do that. Out of those possible 2 games since or the 2 games that would happen before the next podcast, do you think Joel Embiid plays in either or both?
There's only one game. They play Friday, and then their next game will be Monday at 7:00.
Yeah, so we'll probably be.
It'll be one game. We'll see how they do against the Pacers. We'll see how the Eagles do against the Steelers.
We'll take it from there. So thank you guys for tuning in this week, and we will be back.